So finally, after 10 months of waiting, the Humboldt trial has come to be. Now, because the driver pleaded guilty, they don't call it a trial, then they call it a hearing. So the first thing that the hearing did was establish a statement of facts. And fact number one, the truck ran the stop sign at over 90 kilometers an hour. Fact two, the visibility was good. Fact three, the intersection was well marked. Fact four, the sun was not in his eyes. And fact five, the roads were dry. They mention that they don't believe that the driver was on his cell phone. And what this means is they couldn't establish for an absolute fact that he wasn't on his cell phone. And clearly he was distracted somehow. The truck driver went by 4 different signs from a quarter mile back from the intersection, all referring to the fact that an intersection was coming up. So not only did he fail to recognize these signs, he failed to recognize the stop sign as well. So there's 5 different signs warning of the intersection. The court referred to this as the driver failed to recognize the intersection. And the Crown prosecutor said, well, how does that happen? How can a guy miss 4 warning signs and then the stop sign itself? And the stop sign was oversized. It was a 4-foot square stop sign with a flashing red light on it. The visibility was great. It was a clear day. The sun wasn't in his eyes. How could this guy have possibly missed all these signs and run that intersection at full speed? But that's what's happened here. The investigation revealed that the driver had 1 week of training, then he'd run double with another guy for 2 weeks. And in the 11-day period before this accident occurred, this driver had 70 moving violations and violations of the Commercial Highway Vehicles Traffic Act. 70. So it shows you what was going on here, and there was absolutely no training, no proper training by the trucking company, and the Alberta Ministry of Transport just let this guy slide and gave him a license. We also know from the hearing and from the facts before the trial that the shipper was clearly using outside carriers and brokering the loads. I guess, sod's not a valuable commodity. They don't particularly care who hauls it. And they had absolutely no idea which truck this was on. But as far as I'm concerned, the shipper had some responsibility too as to putting this load on a good driver and in a good trucking company, rather than just brokering out the load to just anybody with a truck. And that's what's happened here. They've just gone for the cheapest rate. They've got the cheapest guy, and as Chris Joseph pointed out, oftentimes when you get really cheap carriers and fly-by-night carriers, you get dangerous drivers. And that's what's happened in this case. And it's not just this case. This is just one horrific example of how badly flawed the trucking industry is these days. And there's huge liability, as far as I'm concerned, on the part of the shipper, on the part of the Alberta Ministry of Transport, and on the trucking company, Adesh Dole. And I've been saying it all along, you just can't put any clown behind the wheel of one of these things and hope it all works out. And as Scott Thomas, the one father, noted, he says these things are a rolling missile going down the highway, and they're completely unregulated and uncontrolled by the federal government. He's got a point, he's absolutely right. How does this thing happen? How does this happen? Because you can't fix stupid. They put this untrained clown behind the wheel, and it's been tragic. And here's the result. It's happening every day, but this is just one horrific example of it. There are all sorts of lessons to be learned from this accident and the following hearings. But one of the lessons that hits home for us is the level of responsibility that we as truck drivers carry. We have got to think through and realize and recognize that level of responsibility every day before we get behind the wheel, because it takes a split second for tragedy to strike. And we've got to be aware, completely aware, all the time. Distracted driving, tired driving, that stuff just can't happen, because the potential for the cost of human life is huge. We just can't take that chance. So you can't let anybody push you. You've got to lie down when you're tired. You've got to recognize the hours of service. It's a huge, huge responsibility, and human lives are lost when mistakes are made. And we as truck drivers have to recognize the seriousness of what we do for a living, and not let this type of thing happen to us, and not let this type of thing happen to the driving public and the innocent people around us. We've got to be completely aware all the time. This accident would have never happened in the first place if this guy hadn't been given the tools to go out on the highway and operate a truck on his own. The ministry's at fault. The trucking company's at fault. The shipper shouldn't have loaded this guy. He shouldn't have been given the tools to be out there operating. I pray to God that both the ministry and the government and the trucking industry itself recognizes all these mistakes, avoidable mistakes, learns from these mistakes, and does something about it. This guy had enough knowledge just to get his CDL, but he had absolutely no practical hands-on experience. And that's my problem with how the trucking industry is run these days when it comes to new drivers. All of these new drivers coming out are ill-equipped to handle the job that they're expected to do. A while back we did a video, and it was called, "Are You Prepared to Go to Jail for Your Trucking Job?" And this guy now is going to go to jail for his trucking job. We'll now have to wait until March 22nd for the actual sentencing of Sidhu to see what kind of time he gets, and we'll do another video at that time. This accident is a perfect example of why truck drivers have to be at their absolute best when they're behind the wheel. They can't be tired, they can't be distracted. It's a dangerous job with dangerous consequences. Be careful out there, be the best you can be. Take care, and I will see you safely on the backhaul.